The mud sucked at Riley's boots as she stared at the glint of metal beneath 6 inches of silt. Not a pipe, not rebar. A gold bar, stamped with numbers she couldn't read through the grime, sitting on the drained pond bottom like it had been waiting for her. Behind her, the pump still chugged, draining the last puddles. Around her, scattered across the cracked earth, more bars. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Her phone buzzed. The bank. Final notice before foreclosure proceedings. Riley's hands shook as she bent down and picked up the bar. Heavy. Real. Impossible. 2 weeks earlier, Riley sat on the kitchen floor of her studio apartment, sorting bills into piles. Urgent. Very urgent. Lawsuit pending. The eviction notice lay on top. 14 days to vacate. Her landlord had been patient for 3 months, but patience didn't pay his mortgage. Her phone rang. Her brother Cameron's name lit the screen. She let it go to voicemail. She already knew what he'd say. The same thing he'd said at Grandpa Frank's funeral. At least you got something. That something was Grandpa Frank's property. 11 acres of scrubland an hour outside Nashville. A falling-down farmhouse with a caved-in roof, and a murky 2-acre pond that probably hadn't been maintained since 1987. Cameron got the vintage truck collection. 5 restored Fords worth $30,000 each. Their cousin Jade got the coin collection and the savings bonds. Riley got land that cost $4,000 a year in property taxes she couldn't afford. She opened her banking app $89.34. Her shift at Morrison's Bakery started at 4 a.m., 7 hours from now. Data entry gigs filled her afternoons. Weekend waitressing at Lou's Diner kept her in ramen and hope. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. The voicemail notification blinked. She played it. Hey Riles. Just FYI, I listed Grandpa's truck collection with Barrett Jackson. Should get about $200,000 total. Jade's already sold half the coins. You figure out what to do with that land yet? Probably should sell it before you get hit with another tax bill. There's a developer who might take it off your hands for like $20,000. Let me know if you want his number. Love you. Riley deleted the message. $20,000 wouldn't solve anything. After taxes and her debts, she'd have maybe $12,000 left. 3 months of breathing room before she was back here, sitting on this floor, sorting bills into piles. The letter from the county sat in the urgent pile. The pond's dam had failed inspection, structural integrity compromised, environmental hazard, mandatory repairs within 60 days or face $50,000 in fines and possible criminal charges for negligence. She called for contractors. The cheapest quote was $35,000. Money she didn't have. Money she'd never have. Unless. Riley pulled up YouTube on her cracked phone screen. How to drain a pond. She watched 3 videos, took notes on her water-stained notepad, and checked prices for pond pumps. She could rent one for $400. Do the repairs herself. Rebar, concrete, maybe some sandbags. People did DIY projects all the time. How hard could it be? Her best friend Shayna called at midnight. You're not seriously draining a pond by yourself. The county gave me 60 days. I can't afford a contractor. I can't afford the fines. I definitely can't afford to lose the land and still owe the government $50,000. Riley, you work 80 hours a week already. When are you? I'll figure it out. Riley stared at the ceiling, at the water stain shaped like an elephant. What choice do I have? 3 days later, Riley stood at the edge of Grandpa Frank's pond with a rented pump and a prayer. The water was dark green, thick with algae. She couldn't see more than 6 inches below the surface. God knew what was down there, probably trash, old tires, maybe a shopping cart. The pump roared to life. Water gushed into the drainage trench she'd spent 2 days digging. Her shoulders screamed. Her hands were blistered despite the gloves. But the water level dropped, slowly, then faster. She worked her bakery shifts, drove an hour to the property, worked until dark, drove home, slept 4 hours, repeated. Shayna brought her sandwiches. Cameron texted once. How's the pond project going? Still think you should just sell? She didn't respond. By day 9, the water level was down 4 feet. The pump clogged twice on debris, branches, ancient beer cans, what looked like part of a lawn chair. Riley cleared it, restarted it, kept going. By day 12, she could see the bottom in places. Mud mostly. Silt. The skeletons of dead trees. On day 14, the pond was empty except for puddles and mud. Riley climbed down the sloped bank, her boots sinking into the silt. The dam's crack was visible now, a jagged split running 6 feet up the concrete. Fixable. She'd watched enough videos. She just needed supplies, time, and a miracle. She walked toward the deepest point, where the mud was thickest, planning her repair strategy. Her boot hit something solid. Not a rock, too regular. She crouched, scraped away mud with her gloved hands. An uncovered metal. A rectangular bar, about 10 inches long, heavy as sin, stamped with numbers. 999.9 fine gold. Riley's vision blurred. Her heart hammered. She looked up, scanning the pond bottom, and saw them everywhere. Edges poking through mud, glints of yellow gold in the afternoon sun. Not one bar. Not 10. Hundreds. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The bank again. The foreclosure notice. Riley sat down hard in the mud, clutching the gold bar, and started laughing. Or crying. Maybe both. Riley called Shayna from the pond bottom at 6 p.m., her voice shaking so hard she could barely speak. You need to come here. Right now. Don't tell anyone. Just come. Shayna arrived 40 minutes later, pulled into the muddy driveway in her battered Civic, and picked her way down to the pond. Riley had covered 3 bars with her jacket. The rest she'd left exposed. There were too many to hide. Holy shit, Shayna whispered. Is that gold? Real gold. There's over 200 bars. Maybe more under the deeper mud. Shayna crouched, picked one up, nearly dropped it. This weighs like 30 pounds. Riley, what the hell was your grandfather doing? I don't know. Riley's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He worked at the Postal Service for 40 years. He drove a 1994 Corolla. He bought his clothes at Walmart. Where did he get this? They loaded 10 bars into Riley's truck. All they could safely carry without the suspension bottoming out. Riley covered the rest with a tarp she found in the barn and weighted it with rocks. Not secure. Not even close. But it was after dark, the property was gated, and she didn't know what else to do. At home, Riley stayed up until 3 a.m. Googling. Gold bars. Authenticity. Where to sell. Who to trust. Her bakery shift came and went. She called in sick for the first time in 2 years. She'd deal with the consequences later. At 9 a.m., she stood outside Premier Metals and Assay in downtown Nashville, her backpack heavy with 2 bars. The shop was small, wedged between a pawn shop and a check cashing place. Not promising, but the reviews mentioned discretion. The owner, a man in his 60s named Donald, examined the first bar with a jeweler's loupe. He weighed it on a digital scale. He ran some kind of electronic test Riley didn't understand. Then he set it down very carefully. Where did you get this? My grandfather's property. What? Because it's real. 99.99% pure gold. 27.4 pounds. At today's market rate, approximately $680,000. Riley's knees buckled. She grabbed the counter. Each. The room tilted. Donald poured her water from a cooler. She drank it without tasting it. How many do you have? Riley swallowed. More than 2. Miss, I didn't get your name. Riley Chen. Miss Chen, I need to be very clear with you. If you have multiple bars of this purity and weight, you're carrying somewhere between $10 and $50 million in assets, depending on quantity. You need security. You need a lawyer. You need to document provenance. And you need to tell me right now if there's any possibility these are stolen. Stolen? I know. My grandfather owned them. He left me the property. Do you have documentation? A will? Property deeds. Riley pulled out her phone, showed him the will, the property transfer papers. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. Donald studied the documents, then nodded. All right. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to contact Fortress Security and Vault. I'll give you the number. You're going to have them collect and inventory everything. Then you're going to contact Eleanor Vasquez at Heritage Legal. She specializes in estate law and asset recovery. Do not, under any circumstances, tell your family until you have legal representation. Do you understand? Why not? Because people get strange when millions are involved. You said siblings. A brother. And a cousin who got other parts of the estate. Donald's expression said everything. Lawyer first. Then you can decide what to tell them. If you want to know whether Riley's family tries to take what's hers, subscribe now, because the fight is just beginning. Riley spent $8,000 she didn't have on Fortress Security's emergency service. They arrived in an armored truck at 2 a.m., discreet and professional. By dawn, every bar was cataloged, photographed, and locked in a climate-controlled vault in Memphis. The final count, 247 bars. Total weight, 6,768.8 pounds. Estimated value, $168 million. Eleanor Vasquez had Riley in her office by noon. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with graying hair and a no-nonsense manner that made Riley feel slightly less like she was hallucinating. "Tell me everything about your grandfather." Riley did. The postal service career. The modest house. The obsession with privacy. He traveled, though. Weekends, sometimes weeks at a time. Said he was visiting old friends. "My grandma died when I was 6, so it was just him." Eleanor made notes. "Did he ever mention investments? Business ventures? Anything unusual?" "No. He was just Grandpa Frank. He fixed things. Grew tomatoes. Listened to baseball on AM radio. And he left you the property specifically, not your brother. Cameron got the trucks. Jade got the coins. I got the land." Eleanor leaned back. "He knew. He left you the gold deliberately. The question is why." A courier arrived with a package at 3 p.m. Eleanor signed for it, opened it, and pulled out a stack of papers. Forgers found these in a waterproof container at the pond bottom. Receipts. Purchase records. Dating back 40 years. Riley scanned the pages. Gold purchases. Small amounts, consistently. $5,000 here. $10,000 there. Bought through private dealers, estate sales, coin shops. Never enough to trigger reporting requirements. Accumulated slowly, methodically, over decades. He was hiding money from the government? Riley asked. More like protecting it. Your grandfather lived through the 1970s stagflation, watched the 2008 crash. He didn't trust banks or the stock market, so he converted everything to physical gold and hid it. Eleanor smiled slightly. Paranoid, but effective. Why the pond? Because no one looks at the bottom of a pond. No one drains them unless they have to. He gambled that whoever inherited the property would either sell it immediately or ignore it for years. She met Riley's eyes. "But you drained it." "What?" Riley explained the dam failure, the county notice, the fine she couldn't afford. Eleanor listened, her expression unreadable. "He left it to you specifically because he knew you'd do the work. Your brother would have sold immediately. Your cousin wouldn't have bothered with repairs. But you," Eleanor tapped the inspection notice. "You don't quit, even when you should." Riley's throat tightened. "So what happens now?" "Now we authenticate provenance, pay estate taxes, which will be substantial, and determine if there's any legal challenge to the inheritance. Your brother and cousin may contest the will. They already got what they wanted. They got what they thought was valuable. Once they learn about the gold, they'll claim your grandfather was mentally incompetent, or that you manipulated him, or that the will should be voided. It's ugly, but it's predictable." Riley thought of Cameron's text. "Still think you should just sell." The casual dismissal. The assumption that she'd gotten nothing. "Let them try," she said quietly. The call came 3 days later. "Cameron." Riley let it go to voicemail. "Hey, so funny story. A buddy of mine saw an armored truck at Grandpa's property. What's that about? Call me back. Like, immediately." The second voicemail came an hour later. Jade this time. "Riley, Cameron said something weird is going on with Grandpa's land. You need to tell us what you found. We're family. We have a right to know." Eleanor filed preemptive injunctions that afternoon. By evening, the local news had the story. Nashville woman discovers $168 million gold fortune in grandfather's pond. Riley's phone exploded. Texts, calls, voicemails. "Cameron, you can't keep it all. The will needs to be reviewed." "Jade, this is insane. You owe us at least a third each." Sheena stayed over that night. They sat on Riley's apartment floor, soon to be former apartment, and ate takeout while Riley's phone buzzed nonstop. "You okay?" Sheena asked. Riley thought about it. About Grandpa Frank, methodically buying gold for 40 years. About Cameron's laugh at the will reading. About working 80-hour weeks for $89 in her bank account. "Yeah," she said. "I think I am." The legal battle took 4 months. Cameron and Jade hired a lawyer who argued that Grandpa Frank had been suffering from dementia, that the will was invalid, that Riley had unduly influenced him. They filed motions. They dragged out depositions. They gave interviews to local news stations about how Riley was tearing the family apart. Eleanor demolished their case in 3 weeks. Medical records showed Grandpa Frank sharp as a tack until the day he died. The will had been drafted by a reputable attorney and witnessed by two people with no stake in the outcome. And most damning, Grandpa Frank had left video testimony, recorded 6 months before his death, explaining exactly why he'd structured the inheritance the way he had. Riley watched it in Eleanor's office, her hands clenched. Grandpa Frank sat in his living room, the camera shaky, but his voice steady. If you're watching this, Riley got the land, and she found what I left her. Good. I'm going to explain why I didn't split things evenly, because I know Cameron and Jade are going to pitch a fit. Cameron, you got the trucks because you love trucks. You'll sell them and blow through the money in 2 years on a boat or a business idea that won't work. That's fine. It's your money. Jade, you got the coins because you asked for them specifically at Christmas 3 years ago. You said you'd always wanted them. So they're yours. Riley got the land because she's the only one who wouldn't give up on it. I watched you, kiddo, after David cleaned out your bank account and left. I watched you work yourself to exhaustion for that little girl of yours, Emma, who's going to grow up strong because of you. You didn't quit. You didn't ask anyone for help. You just kept going. The gold is yours because you'll use it right. Not just for yourself, but for Emma and for other people who need it. You see people others don't. You understand what it's like to be invisible. That's worth more than all the gold in that pond. So if Cameron and Jade are watching this with their lawyer, trying to figure out how to take what's yours, stop. You got what I meant you to have. Let Riley have hers. The judge ruled in Riley's favor. Cameron and Jade were ordered to pay Riley's legal fees. Neither spoke to her after. The estate taxes came to $47 million. Riley paid them. The remaining $121 million hit her account on a Tuesday. That morning, she did something she'd dreamed about for 3 years. She went to Morrison's bakery and quit. Not angrily. Just walked in, thanked her manager for the opportunity, and left. Then she drove to Lou's Diner and bought it. The owner, Lou himself, had been trying to sell for 2 years. Riley paid asking price, gave him cash, and promoted the weekend manager, a single mom named Tasha, to general manager with a $70,000 salary and full benefits. You're serious? Tasha asked, tears streaming down her face. Completely. You've worked here 10 years for minimum wage and tips. That's done. Everyone gets a raise. Everyone gets health insurance. And we're finally fixing the AC. The data entry company got an email. I'm resigning effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity. Riley didn't explain. She didn't know them an explanation. The new house came next. 4 bedrooms in a good school district, a yard for Emma, an office with walls, and a door that locked. She paid cash. No mortgage. No landlord. No eviction notices ever again. Emma stood in her new bedroom, her own bedroom, not a corner of a studio, and burst into tears. It's so big, Mom. I know, baby. Riley held her daughter, feeling the weight of 3 years of fear finally lift. We're okay now. We're really, really okay. But the moment that mattered most came 6 weeks after the settlement, when Riley stood in front of a newly purchased building in East Nashville. The sign above the door read, Chen Community Resource Center. Inside, legal aid services, financial counseling, job training, subsidized childcare, and a food pantry stocked weekly. Riley had hired a director, funded operations for 5 years up front, and established a $20 million endowment to keep it running forever. At the opening ceremony, a reporter asked, why give so much away? Riley thought of Grandpa Frank, buying gold bars one at a time for 40 years. She thought of sitting on her apartment floor, sorting bills into piles, choosing between medicine and food. She thought of the pond, drained and repaired and refilled. Clean now, safe, no longer hiding anything. Because being invisible doesn't mean being worthless, Riley said. My grandfather knew that. Now I do too. That night, she drove Emma out to the property. The farmhouse was still falling down. She'd deal with that later. But the pond gleamed in the moonlight, its surface smooth as glass. Grandpa Frank hid treasure for you, Emma asked, holding Riley's hand. He hid it for us, because he knew we'd need it. And he knew I wouldn't give up until I found it. They stood there until the stars came out, reflected in the water that had kept it secret for so long. Riley's phone buzzed, Cameron's number, blocked now, trying again. She deleted the notification without looking. Some people would never understand that value wasn't about who got the most. It was about who understood what they'd been given and why. Riley squeezed Emma's hand. Ready to go home? To our house. Yeah, baby. To our house. They drove back through the dark, leaving the pond behind. In the morning, Riley had a meeting with architects. The farmhouse would become a retreat center for women escaping domestic violence. Then lunch with Tasha to discuss expanding the diner's menu. Then a site visit to the community center to see how the first week had gone. She had work to do. Not the exhausting scramble of survival, but the purposeful work of building something that mattered. Just like Grandpa Frank. Just like women who refuse to stay invisible, who drain the pond and find the gold and use it to change not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them. The pond was empty of gold now, but Riley's life was full of something better. Purpose, security, and the knowledge that she'd earned every bit of it. Sometimes the inheritance isn't just what you receive, it's what you do with it after. And Riley Chen was just getting started.